Above the icy waters of Iceland, a German bomber crew witnesses something they never expected. An American warplane bursts through the clouds, its machine guns tearing apart a Luftwaffe Condor. This marked the first time in World War II that German airmen saw the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, the strange twin-tailed monster they would soon dread and become obsessed with, built to satisfy an American requirement that no plane had ever met before. A 1,000-pound weapon load delivered at speeds over 360 miles from 20,000 feet, reached in just 6 minutes of climbing. This aircraft amazed even the people who created it and rewrote the book on aerial warfare in a single night. But what made it so frightening to the Axis powers? And how did the world's most unusual fighter overcome every setback and catastrophe to become America's most terrifying flying weapon? The story begins with a challenge that looked impossible to solve. In February 1937, two junior officers from the Army Air Corps, Benjamin Kelsey and Gordon Saville, worked together to write new specifications for America's future fighter. Their proposal, labeled X-608, sounded more like a fantasy than an actual order. The paper demanded a single pilot interceptor capable of hitting 360 meters at high altitude, reaching 20,000 feet in 6 minutes, and carrying at least 1,000 pounds of weapons and bullets, double what any fighter plane in use could handle. The machine would have to run at maximum power for a full hour, outclimb everything else in the air, and remain tough enough for battle. Kelsey and Saville cleverly chose the word interceptor to avoid the Army's tight restrictions on pursuit aircraft size and weapons. By calling it an interceptor, they could ask for bigger guns and better engines without hitting red tape barriers. These requirements were so extreme that no American manufacturer had ever tried anything close. During a time when most fighters topped out at 300 MSRP and carried just two .30 caliber guns, X-608 called for a jump into uncharted territory. The Army's thinking was shifting. The Spanish Civil War had proven that bombers were becoming faster and more dangerous, and that lightly armed fighters couldn't match them. Air Corps leaders wanted a machine that could catch and destroy enemy bombers before they hit American cities or military bases. The new aircraft would have to climb fast, fly at great heights, and pack enough punch to knock down heavy bombers with one attack. These technical demands forced designers to question everything they knew about fighter design. A 1,000-pound weapon load required bigger engines and a stronger frame. The speed and climb requirements ruled out current power sources and pushed manufacturers to think about completely new designs. The challenge was so tough that only a handful of companies even tried to submit plans. One of them was Lockheed, a new company that had never made a military aircraft but saw X-608 as a way to jump ahead of their rivals. The stakes were enormous. Whoever could meet the X-608 requirements would shape American air power for the next 10 years. The hunt for an answer had started, and time was running short. Lockheed's team of engineers gathered in an old whiskey factory on the edge of Burbank, California, working among drawings and handmade models that looked nothing like normal fighters. Clarence Kelly Johnson, only 30 years old, pushed for a design that threw out every traditional rule. A center section for the pilot and weapons, with two long, thin sections on either side holding the engines and tail surfaces. The twin-boom design wasn't just for appearance. It provided space for two liquid-cooled Allison V1710 engines, each making 1,000 horsepower, with turbo superchargers placed behind the engines to maintain power above 20,000 feet. The propellers turned in opposite directions, a counter-rotating system that eliminated torque and helped the big fighter fly straight even at full power. The engineers attached the metal skin smoothly, used stainless steel where others wouldn't dare, and added a tricycle landing gear for better ground control. All weapons, 4 50 caliber machine guns and one 20 mm cannon, were grouped in the nose, letting pilots shoot a concentrated stream of bullets at targets hundreds of yards away without worrying about crossing their fire like wing-mounted weapons. This was a gun platform designed for the modern age. On January 27, 1939, test pilot Ben Kelsey climbed into the XP-38 prototype for its first flight at March Field. The initial takeoff was nerve-wracking. Shaking rattled the cockpit, and a flap problem forced Kelsey to land without the normal help of air brakes, scraping the tail during touchdown. The issue came from aluminum control rods, which were replaced with steel almost right away, but the real challenge came 2 weeks later. Kelsey received orders to fly the XP-38 from coast to coast, from California to New York, hoping to beat Howard Hughes's speed record and demonstrate to Washington what Lockheed's unusual machine could accomplish. He launched at sunrise on February 11th, making only 2 fuel stops, pushing the Lightning to 420 met dph over the middle of the country. However, as he neared Mitchell Field, ice formed in the carburetors. Both engines lost power. Kelsey struggled to keep the Lightning airborne, but the prototype crashed short of the runway, sliding to a stop on a golf course. A complete wreck. Rather than killing the project, the accident created more urgency. The XP-38 had crossed the nation in just over 7 hours of flying time, maintaining speeds that shocked Army Air Corps officials. Within weeks, Lockheed got an order for 13 YP-38s. The design team made the airframe lighter, switched the propeller rotation for better control, and made dozens of improvements based on Kelsey's flight records. The Lightning was no longer just a drawing on paper. It was a machine that had shown in one dangerous trip that American fighters could jump into the future. In late 1942, American P-38 squadrons reached North Africa with little battle experience, flying missions next to veteran Luftwaffe pilots who had already survived a year of brutal fighting. The 14th Fighter Group, recently arrived and eager to prove themselves, was quickly given close bomber protection duties at medium and low heights, jobs that ignored the Lightning's best features. Instead of using their high-altitude power and long-distance capability, pilots found themselves stuck in rigid formations, unable to climb or move freely. German Bf-109s and FW-190s, flown by aces with dozens of kills, took advantage of every weakness. They attacked from the sun, diving from above, then rolling away before the heavier P-38s could fight back. The Lightning's long wings and twin boom shape, so effective at high altitude, made it slow to turn and clumsy in tight circles when forced down low. In these spinning dogfights, the agile German fighters regularly outturned and outclimbed their American enemies, picking off isolated planes with deadly accuracy. Mechanical troubles made things worse. The P-38F's turbo superchargers had problems in the North African heat and sand, and engine breakdowns happened frequently. Many pilots, still learning the tricks of the Allison engines, found themselves battling both the enemy and their own planes. Within 3 months, the 14th Fighter Group lost 32 pilots out of 54 and was down to just 7 working Lightnings. The 1st and 82nd Groups didn't do much better, often flying with half their squadrons broken down for maintenance. Loss numbers far exceeded replacements, forcing units to share aircraft and rotate tired crews. American fighting methods fell behind combat reality. Commands from headquarters demanded tight escort, chaining the fighters to the bombers and stopping aggressive sweeps that might have cleared the air ahead. Pilots who left formation to chase attackers faced punishment. German units, in contrast, changed quickly, focusing their attacks on the escorts, then turning on the bombers once the P-38s were pulled away. In one November battle, Jagdgeschwader 53 claimed 7 P-38s without losing any of their own. Through the winter, similar one-sided fights became normal. By January 1943, the Lightning's reputation was damaged, and American commanders faced tough questions about strategy, training, and the real price of learning to fight in enemy skies. In the huge expanses of the Pacific, the P-38 Lightning finally found where it belonged. The gaps between islands required a fighter that could fly longer, climb higher, and hit harder than anything the Japanese or Germans had faced before. By 1943, American aces like Richard Bong and Thomas Maguire were building up scores that would make them famous, each flying the Lightning on missions that pushed the limits of endurance and navigation. But nothing challenged the aircraft, or its pilots, like the mission to kill Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. On April 8, 1943, 18 P-38Gs took off from Guadalcanal before sunrise, each carrying drop tanks and every gallon of fuel the wings could hold. Their target was almost 435 miles away across open water and enemy territory. The plan required radio silence and sea-level flying, keeping the formation just above the waves to avoid radar detection. Major John Mitchell led the group, figuring every course and speed with the accuracy of a chess expert. The room for mistakes was measured in minutes and miles. One wrong direction and the target would escape. As the sun came up, the Lightnings climbed to attack altitude. At 9:34 a.m., the lead section spotted 2 Japanese G-4M Betty bombers and 6 Zero escorts coming down toward Bougainville. Lieutenant Rex Barber, flying in the attack flight, moved forward as the formation split apart. Barber got close to the lead bomber, aimed his guns and fired a burst that ripped through the right engine and body. The bomber streamed smoke, dropped its wing, and vanished into the jungle below. Inside was Yamamoto, the planner of Pearl Harbor, killed immediately by gunfire from Barber's P-38. The second bomber, carrying Admiral Ugaki, crashed near the shoreline while the Zeros scattered in panic. The round trip covered almost 900 miles, pushing the Lightnings to the limit of their range. Only the P-38 could have made that journey, and only with the discipline and skill of pilots who believed in their machines and each other. Yamamoto's death sent shockwaves through the Japanese leadership and boosted Allied spirits. In the months that came after, the Lightning became the symbol of American power. A fighter that could strike anywhere, anytime, and make it home. For the pilots who flew it and the enemies who fought it, the P-38 was no longer just a new shape in the sky. It was proof that the United States could fight a world war on its own rules and come out on top. Reports from prisoner questioning and Luftwaffe documents prove the mental impact the Lightning had in both Europe and the Pacific. German pilots nicknamed it the fork-tailed devil and developed special tactics just to deal with it. Japanese pilots learned to fear its long reach and devastating firepower, especially after high-profile missions like the Yamamoto intercept. Today, the P-38's design breakthroughs, nose-mounted weapons, high-altitude turbo systems, and long-distance capability are seen as engineering landmarks. Its influence lives on in every aircraft built for reach and accuracy. The twin-boom layout, once considered radical, proved that unconventional thinking could solve impossible problems. As Ben Kelsey wrote, the P-38 proved that American air power could fly like hell and fight like a wasp upstairs. That distinctive silhouette still represents in any museum or sky the moment aerial combat changed forever. From the drawing boards of Burbank to the skies over the Pacific, the Lightning showed the world that American innovation could turn the impossible into reality, one mission at a time.